Hey guys, welcome to Pallets Everyday, and today I'm going to talk about tips and tricks that I wish I knew when I got started in woodworking. Without further ado, let's get it started. So guys, the first thing that I want to talk about is something that it was actually something that got me started into woodworking, but then I found out the truth behind it. And that is the theme of pallets, of using pallets, repurposing pallets, and using all the wood from the pallets. Now, it is very, very, very labor intensive if you want to use pallets. I'm not telling you that you can't do it. I'm telling you that you can do it. It's just going to take a very long time. It's going to take a lot of effort, and you have to be very, very careful and know what you're doing. Now, the wood that they use on the pallets, you have to make sure you look at all the markings and make sure that they don't have any contaminants or things that can be dangerous to you. And with that said, at the end of the day, you never know where that pallet has been, and you can't have a guarantee that it's going to be good, usable wood. Now, when I started woodworking, I got all excited and I started looking online who had pallets to give away. I drove around everywhere, collected a lot of pallets, and I found out I ended up with a just stack of wood that just sits there. And that is a big reason because most of the wood, it's not uniform and you're not gonna end up using it for things that you want to use it. Now, I do use pieces for extra stuff, make little tools or whatever, something small that I need, that is perfect. Now, I do know there's a lot of YouTubers and a lot of people out there that use pallets to repurpose them, that make counters, that make everything. But you do need a lot of tools to get there. Now, what I mean by that you need a lot of tools to get there is one of the most important tools you're gonna need if you're gonna work with pallets is a planer. Now, a planer is very expensive and is very costly if it starts to break down on you because the wood had a little piece of metal or it just got cut onto the blades, and it's just a lot of pain to go through when you can get the same materials and even better by just paying just a little bit. Now, with that said, if you do have a planer and you said, hey, I'm gonna risk my blades and let's just go for it. Now, you can do a lot of stuff and you can repurpose the wood. It's a very nice job you can do with it. It's very pleasing. You're helping out, you're repurposing wood that otherwise you're gonna land somewhere else, and you can get a lot of stuff done with it. But in my recommendation, I know it sounds fun. Sure, go ahead, go get a pallet, start breaking it down. You're gonna see how much work you're gonna put into it, how much sweat you're gonna have because of just breaking down one pallet. And then once you have that little pile of wood that's actually usable wood, you're gonna be like, okay, maybe it's not a good idea. But sure, it's gonna inspire you to get into it. It's gonna inspire you to actually get started with more woodworking projects, and you're just gonna start twisting your mind to see what you can do to get better wood, etc. So go for it, but don't plan on it. Another tip that I wish somebody would have told me since I started woodworking is sand after every cut. Now, this makes so much sense once you start doing it. It just gives it so much of a nicer smooth to everything. It's a very professional touch once you sand every single cut that you make. Now, this actually helps a lot in your finishes. I know that when you get started on woodworking, you might not think of that, but it's something you're gonna start thinking about real soon, and you're gonna start enjoying doing because it just gives it such a perfect and professional touch for everything that you do. So don't forget, sand after every cut that you make. One of my favorite tips is wood glue putty. Now, wood glue putty is gonna take you out of any jam that you come up or any chip that you end up making, and any joint that wasn't perfect. Wood glue putty is as it just sounds. You grab a little bit of sand dust from whatever you just sanded down, just mix it together, and it works miracles, and it's gonna blend in with the perfect color. So some people do keep in hand certain types of wood putty that's already made and specific colors, but if you don't have that laying around or it doesn't match the color you're looking for, grab some dust from whatever you just sanded and put it with some glue and you're good to go. Another tip is your excess glue. Whatever you have some glue out, whenever you have some squeeze out of some glue that you're putting some stuff together, when I started woodworking, I would always grab a little rag and just swipe it down. Now, do not do this because you're gonna regret it whenever you put your finish onto your product. Whenever you actually do that swipe, you're actually spreading it more and you're gonna have a nice streak of wherever you just wiped it down. The best thing that you can do for squeeze out is leave it there, let it dry as a bulk. Come around later with a chisel and just scrape it off, and it's gonna come right off, and you will not regret it whenever you're staining or painting later on. Another major tip that I actually knew when I started woodworking, but I did not want to listen to it, but I actually did listen to myself on this one, is do not buy expensive tools right away. Whenever you start, I actually just had a circular saw, and it was a portable circular saw, and that's pretty much all I had, and I had a drill. And I pretty much got through with that, making a lot of things. And I say this because at the beginning, you kind of don't know what you need until you actually start working on your project, you start building stuff, and you're like, wow, I actually need this, or I actually wish I had this to make this better. And that's when you start buying your power tools. Now, you can do every single job with hand tools. Remember, the basics of woodworking is you're removing some material or you're adding some material. So you're either gluing things together or removing by cutting, by sanding, any type, but it's the same common groundwork. And what that means is that your power tools are just gonna make everything easier, but it doesn't mean you can't do it with the ones that you have. So with my circular saw, I did pretty much everything I could. And I took a very long time before I bought my first table saw. I actually got this table saw used, it's a second hand, and it works amazing. I also recommend you to look into tools because tools are actually made to last a very long time. Some of them are even made to last a lifetime. So make sure you go out there, there's great deals. Do not go for huge expensive machinery. You do not need it until you actually need it. Don't follow the urge to just go and buy everything because you can, because you actually can set up an entire workshop in around under $1,000 or so. And that could be a video that I'll be making pretty soon. With that said, now I do have one very important tip. And that is, don't be afraid. If you're afraid of trying it, you're never going to do it. So make sure that you're not afraid of trying it. You're doing woodworking. If you mess up, you grab another piece. If you cut it the wrong way, you can find a way how to fix it, find a way how to make it your own, find a way how to get your style, but never be afraid of doing it. The things that you should be afraid of is power tools. You should treat them with respect and always be afraid, because that way you're always gonna keep it in mind that they can hurt you, and they will if they get the chance to. But do not be afraid of working and taking on projects that you never thought it could be possible. My first project was a picnic table that's sitting in the back of my house, and I just saw a picture of it. I said, hey, I could buy this wood and make it, and it actually turned out awesome. And from there on, I've done everything else, and pretty much everything that I've done, I've actually filmed it the first time that I make it, and I've never had any problems. I've always said, hey, I'm gonna go for it. I can't be scared of this. It's just putting stuff together. How hard can it be, right? So with that in mind, do not be afraid of trying new things. The only things that you should be afraid of is power tools. Keep that in mind and be safe with them. Now, some tips that are gonna help you make everything look perfect. Always, whenever you're gonna join things together with screws, make sure you put a pilot hole and countersink your screws. This gives it a finish that's completely professional. You're never gonna miss it. Once you do it once, you will never go back to just drilling a screw without a pilot hole and countersinking. So that's a very good tip to make everything look professional. And the last tip that I have for you today is make sure you measure 3 times and always dry assemble everything, and measure 3 times, because you may think that you're measuring it, and once you go and you're gonna cut it, it's gonna be wrong. So measure it again and only cut once. That's always the first thing that they tell you. Measure twice but only cut once. And it comes in handy because it happens a lot. You're gonna get used to this, and it happens. You're gonna cut things that are just the wrong size, and then you're gonna measure everything out. You're gonna be like, wait, this doesn't measure up. So it does happen. Don't be afraid of that. If it happens, just do it again. But make sure you always measure 3 times before cutting once. There you go, guys. There are some tips that I wish that I would have been told when I started woodworking. I hope you learn from them. I hope they help you out. If you learned something today, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Now, if you know somebody that can use some of these tips, make sure you share it with them. Let me know in your comments down below what was your favorite tip and if you want a second part of tips that you should know when woodworking. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next build.